Welcome, everyone. My name is Inbar Blankenship, and on behalf of the online and telephone support business, thank you for participating in this month's Tech Connect Genius webinar. We offer these as a way to provide you with added value under your support agreement. Today's speaker is Avery Martin. Avery is Technical Support Engineer at Rockwell Automation. He supports FactoryTalk SE, Viewpoint, RS-232, and Plant PAX. Avery started with Rockwell Automation in 2013 after receiving a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering from Florida A&M University. In Avery's free time, he enjoys working on his '93 Honda Civic. Today, Avery will discuss HMI server FactoryTalk SE in a distributed network. He will also address any questions you may have. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please use the WebEx chat window to send those questions to me. Just choose Send to Host. We will send a link to the recording of today's session afterwards. I'll mention it again since it's always the most popular question. We will send a link to a recording of today's session. Avery, I'll pass things over to you.
Thank you, Inbar, for that introduction. And just like you said, my name is Avery, and today I'll be talking about creating HMI, alarm, and data servers in a FactoryTalk SE distributed system. I've been working with the company now for about 3 years, and mainly I support the FactoryTalk SE product, as well as RS-232 and a little bit of Plant PAX. Here's the agenda of what I'll be talking about. At first, I want to just lay the foundation and talk about what is a distributed system. Next, I'll be moving into, what are the required software and hardware to create a distributed system. And then after that, we'll talk about creating a network distributed application from scratch. You'll see me do that here in the WebEx. And I have that highlighted here because that's the real meat and potatoes of what I want to talk about. And then after that, we'll open the floor for some questions. So what is a distributed system? Just to break the ice a little bit, here I have a picture of the inside of a restaurant. One of my favorite places is J. Alexander's. And, when you go to a restaurant, normally there are a lot of patrons sitting, waiting to order. And then when you place your order, that order gets brought back to the chef, and the chef prepares the food, and the food comes back out to you. This is analogous to a server-client arrangement. There'll be many clients out there, and they'll be making a request to a single server, or in some cases multiple servers, for a certain piece of data, and then that request will get sent back to the client. So here I have kind of a simple network drawing of one server and 6 different clients here. And this would be an example as if, or this would be just like our chef patron example, except we have one chef in the kitchen and 6 different patrons requesting data. Here it's a little bit more fancy, but here I'm just introducing some products now. So instead of just calling our server, now we're going to call him the FactoryTalk directory server. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later and what the FactoryTalk directory is. In addition to that, this guy is also the FactoryTalk SE server, as well as the RS Enterprise data server, as well as the FactoryTalk alarm event server. So this is kind of like a master chef that's able to send out different types of data. And then down at the bottom, instead of just calling our clients, we start to introduce some other products like FactoryTalk SE client for the bottom 5, and then, or the rightmost 5, and then the one on the left is the FactoryTalk View Studio. And then here we're getting even more fancy. We split up our single server into different servers now, and we've also introduced a PLC to the equation, right? So this would be an example of, or analogous to, multiple chefs in the kitchen that have a certain specialty, right? And depending on what type of data you're after, that request is going to go to a certain server, right? Also, something to note here is the amount of computers here. Here we have about 10 PCs in this drawing, and here that means we're pushing the limit as to how many computers we can have in a work group, right? Any more than 10 PCs, we need to leave the work group environment and start putting our computers on a domain. Also, something that's important here is name resolution. In a domain environment, the domain name server, or DNS server, will provide the name resolution, but in a work group, we may need to use host files for that name resolution. Another point to make is, hey, I have these computers broken out here. At what point do I need to host my SE server on another PC? And hopefully, we'll discuss that later. Kind of just showing you some shorthand here. A while ago, I'm replacing the FactoryTalk directory with the acronym FTV for short. The FactoryTalk SE server, we're going to call him the HMI server for short. The FactoryTalk alarm and event server, we're going to call him the alarm server for short. The RSLinks Enterprise data server, we're going to call him the data server for short. Our FactoryTalk View Studio PC will be the engineering workstation, or EWS for short, and all of our FactoryTalk View SE clients will be called operator workstations, or OWS for short. Talking a little bit about what is the role of all of these servers. Why do we need to go to this chef for certain information? So starting with the FactoryTalk directory, the FactoryTalk directory is like the head honcho in the FactoryTalk network. You can only have one in a single FactoryTalk network. All the computers participating in the FactoryTalk network need to point to the same FactoryTalk directory. He is the one who sets the boundaries on the FactoryTalk network, as well as there's no redundancy available for the FactoryTalk directory. However, that FactoryTalk information is stored in cache on all of the remote clients, so that if the FactoryTalk directory does go down, that information is stored in client on all the other PCs, stored in cache, I should say. Moving on to the HMI server, this is the person that's responsible for keeping all that graphic information in memory, right? So when your remote clients are navigating back and forth between screens, they're making a request for graphic information from the HMI server. He's the one that also serves data for things like data log models, macros, events, derived tags, recipes. All those things run as services behind the HMI server. And unlike the FactoryTalk directory, we can configure HMI server redundancy. Also, let me talk a little bit about the symbols here. I didn't talk about it much, but that symbol for the FactoryTalk directory, you won't see that in FactoryTalk View Studio, but when you go to specify FactoryTalk directory location, that's what you'll see in the start menu. As opposed to the symbol I have here for the HMI server, this symbol you will see in FactoryTalk View Studio. Moving on to the RSLinks Enterprise data server. This server is the middleman between your PLCs and your remote clients. So all those tag values that reside in the PLC get delivered to the clients by your Links Enterprise data server. Just like HMI server, we can configure redundancy here. And then also I wanted to touch on this a little bit, device-based alarming. That's when you use ALMA or ALMD instruction inside the controller. That is handled by Links Enterprise only. So you don't really need an alarm event server for that. That's a common question there. And then moving on to the FactoryTalk alarm and event server, this is the server responsible for saving all of the alarm configuration in memory, as well as it handles the enunciation, the logging, as well as the acknowledgement of all alarms. And both of these symbols here for Links Enterprise as well as for the alarm server, you will see that in the Explorer tree inside of FactoryTalk View Studio. Moving on to the client roles, and this is a little bit of a debate here because I'm calling my engineering workstation a client. And if you had to pick between, if you only had two containers, a server and a client container, you had to pick, I would consider my engineering workstation more of a client than a server, right? Because the client or my engineering workstation still has to go out and connect to a server to pull down the graphic information. So what is the role of an engineering workstation, right? This is like your easel. This is where you would sit and develop your application. This is where you would modify your graphics. You would configure all of your shortcuts. You would also create your alarms, and you can even create the network distributed application from inception, right? That's where you do it at, right at your engineering workstation. Moving on to the client here, or what we refer to as the operator workstation, this is the point of entry for all of our operators, right? This is where you would sit and be able to view all of the tag values that are in our project. We can also acknowledge alarms, receive alarm information, as well as navigate back and forth between different graphics, right? And take note of the symbol here. The operator workstation or client symbol is very similar to that engineering workstation symbol, except the engineering workstation symbol, I'm putting a pencil here. And let me make it clear that these symbols, this is what you would see in the start menu. So when you go to launch FactoryTalk View Studio on your engineering workstation, that's the symbol you're going to see there with the pencil. And when you go to launch FactoryTalk View SE Client, that's the symbol you would see in the start menu. So what are some of the advantages of a distributed system? In a network distributed environment, you're allowed to host your FactoryTalk directory, HMI server, alarm server, and data servers all on separate PCs, right? We can't do that in some of the other options you see pictured down below. Also, you have the ability to have multiple clients talking to a single HMI server for graphic information. We can't do that in some of the other options down here as well. And then also we have the option to determine when our servers load. They can load when the operating system initializes, or load on demand when that client makes its first request for data. Also, in the network distributed environment, we can create areas to better organize our servers. We're going to talk about that in a little bit here. So here I'm moving away from the network drawings and I'm moving more towards containers, right, or boundaries. And in yellow here, I have the big yellow square that represents our entire FactoryTalk network, and everybody is in that, right? And PC1 is our FactoryTalk directory. On the left-hand side, still inside of our FactoryTalk network, I have our first network distributed application, right? And inside of that network distributed application, I have a single HMI server, a single alarm server, and a single data server, all hosted on one PC. This would be the example of our head chef, or where everything is on one box, right? On the right-hand side, we have our second network distributed application, right? But inside of him, we have two different areas, or two different folders. They look like folders. You'll see that in a moment. And inside of our area 1, we have a single HMI server, alarm server, and data server. And inside of area 2, we have a single HMI server, and alarm server, and data server. Just showing you what that looks like in FactoryTalk View Studio, this is what application 1 would look like, right? All of these guys hosted on the same PC here. Moving on to application 2, this is what it would look like in our Explorer tree inside of FactoryTalk View Studio. Notice how we have the areas now, all right? And I want to make it clear that these are not a redundant pair. All right, so these are two individual HMI servers that can be hosted on two individual PCs. Also, I wanted to talk a little bit about the areas. So the areas here are just used to better organize our servers. And whenever I wanted to make this kind of like a treasure hunt, right? So if you see a scroll with a number in it, that is a knowledge base answer ID. And this one describes the best practices when using areas. Moving on to some of the required software. Here is a list of the required software based on the role of that PC. So for the FactoryTalk directory, all you really need is FactoryTalk Services Platform. And for the HMI server, we need FactoryTalk Services Platform as well as FactoryTalk SE server, right? And I've written these in kind of shorthand so I could fit it, but I've defined that on the next slide. Also, we have the engineering workstation, which needs FactoryTalk Services Platform, FactoryTalk View Studio, and FactoryTalk View Client, right? So you can test your application at the engineering workstation. Moving on to the alarm server, all you really need for an alarm server is Services Platform and FactoryTalk Alarm Events, right? And then moving on to our data server, all we really need here is FactoryTalk Services Platform and RSLinx Enterprise, and last but not least, on our operated workstation, we need FactoryTalk Services Platform as well as FactoryTalk View SE Client. Notice that all of these boxes need FactoryTalk Services Platform, right? And that's kind of the foundation for any PC to participate in a FactoryTalk network. And here I'm just defining some of those shorthand terms I used on the last slide, but also notice that I'm listing the versions here, right? So for FactoryTalk Services Platform, the latest version you could go out and download right now is version 2.80. Same thing for Alarm and Events, and version 5.80 for RSLinx Enterprise. And for FactoryTalk View Site Edition, Server, Client, and Studio Enterprise, we're at version 8.20. And notice here, I have a star next to the bottom three. That means that these three require an activation, right? But the top three do not. And then also, here's another scroll for us here. This tech note just lists all of the FactoryTalk products as well as the catalog number that goes with them. You know, so if you're looking for that catalog number, you can find them here in this tech note. So moving on to some of the minimum hardware requirements, and I always tell, you know, customers like, hey, you know, I copied and pasted this from the release notes, but you really want to take these with a grain of salt, because if you look here at the recommended, it says, you know, 4 gigs of RAM for our application server. And, you know, you'd be pretty hard-pressed to go to, you know, any big box store and buy a computer with less than 4 gigs of RAM nowadays, right? So, you know, be generous with the RAM, be generous with the space. But I still wanted to include this in the presentation. All right. So moving on here to our demonstration. Just to lay the groundwork here, I'm going to be working with 3 different virtual images, right? These are the Plant Packs virtual templates. The first one's called PASS, the second one, which is our engineering workstation, is called EWS, and the last one is our operator workstation called OWS Verbatim. These are the actual computer names, you know. All of these PCs are in a work group. All right, and I've also listed the operating systems here. So our PASS server has Windows Server 2012. Our engineering workstation and our operating workstation both have Windows 8.1 Pro. And I'm going to hopefully demonstrate to you how to create a network distributed application from scratch. So I want to minimize this here. There we go. Minimize. Open this up. There we go. There we go. So yeah, so you see I have my 3 virtual images here, my 3 different computers, and right now I'm sitting right at the engineering workstation PC, and I already launched FactoryTalk View Studio here, and this is the first thing you see after you launch FactoryTalk View Studio. What type of application do you want to create? In our case here, we're going to create our network distributed application. And then it says, hey, you want to open an existing one or do you want to make a new one here? We're going to click a new, and we're going to give our application a name. I'm going to call it demo application. There we go. So we got our demo application here. All right, and then inside of here, I'm going to create our areas, right? So I'm just going to come in here and click New Area, and this area is going to be for my HMI server, so I'm going to call him HMI Area. All right, and then also I'm going to create another area, and this is going to be for our data server. Just to follow suit here, I'm going to call him Data Area. And then last but not least, I'm going to create one more area for our alarm server. I'm going to call him Alarm Area. So now we got our 3 areas here. Next, I'm going to come in here into my HMI area, and I'm going to create a new HMI server. All right? And for the name here, I'm going to call him HMI_SVR. For HMI server. And then note we have the option to say, hey, what PC do you want to host this on, right? I don't want to use the engineering workstation. I'm going to instead use my pass box here. I'm going to click Finish. Awesome. So whenever you create an HMI server, you get prompted with this. You want to add these controller instruction faceplates. These are predefined faceplates, but we're not going to use those here. So I'm going to hit Clear All and click OK. So now we just created our network distributed application. We've created a few areas, and we've created our HMI server that resides on our pass box, right? So if I go over here to my pass box, and I open up Windows Explorer, I'm just going to navigate to that HMI project directory. Look here, there's a folder named after that HMI server we just created. This is where that graphic information resides in memory, right here. All right. So going back to our engineering workstation, I'm also going to create a data server, an RSync Enterprise data server. And I'm not going to host him on the engineering workstation. I'm also going to host him on our PaaS server as well. And then look at some of these other tabs here. We have the option to change the name, which I'm going to do. I'm going to call him data_SVR, just to follow suit with our HMI server. And then for redundancy, I won't provide any redundancy, but this is where you would set that up, right? So if you have another computer with services platform as well as RSync Enterprise installed, you can check this box and type the name of that PC in here to set up your redundant data servers, right? And then over here on the Alarm and Event tab, this is where you would enable that alarm and event support. This is that device-based alarming, those ALMAs or ALMD instructions that we talked about earlier, right? You just check this checkbox, and if you want to log those alarms to a SQL database, you can enable history down here. We won't be doing that here in this demonstration, but still wanted to show you guys that. All right, I'm going to hit Apply and OK on that. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Awesome. And then last but not least, I'm going to add one more server here. This time it's going to be a tag alarm and event server. I'm going to host him on the pass box as well. I'm going to name him alarm_SVR. All right. No, it won't be let me back up a little bit, talk about these different tabs. Here for our alarm server, notice we can provide redundancy as well. I won't be doing that, but this is where you would check, hey, provide redundancy and tell them what PC you want to be the secondary. And also, we can log our alarms here. I won't be doing that because I haven't set up my SQL database, but I still wanted to talk about that a little bit. So now we have our alarm server in here and our data server. Real quick, I'd like to also, at this point, take a step back. I'm going to move over to our RS Logic 5000, right? Our programming environment for our controller, and I just want to create a blank project here. I'm going to hit New. I've got an L74 FlashDET V19. I'm going to call this Demo CLX. 7-slot chassis at slot 0. Awesome, awesome. We just got a new project here in Logic 5000, and I just want to create a free running timer here with a 10-second preset. Put an XIO in here. I like to keep my timers here controller scope to keep things simple. Awesome. Awesome. And we're going to download that right to our controller here. Awesome. So our PC is in, our program is run. Oh, whoops, I think I accidentally closed that, but no worries here. I can open it right back up. Back to FTView Studio. Going right back into our network distributed application that we just created. And there it is listed this time in the existing tab. Remember, this was blank before, but it's listed there now. Got a second to load. Awesome, awesome. So I've just created a project that's running in our controller right now, right, and has a free running timer in there, but I haven't made that connection between our data server and our PLC, right? So I just want to come in here into our communication setup and create that shortcut. So I'm going to call him CLX1, for example, and drill out through our Ethernet card, through our backplane, and select our controller here. Apply, say yes, and then click OK down here on the bottom right. All right. So now I've made that connection between our RS Identified data server and the controller. All right. Now I'm going to come in here underneath my HMI server, right-click on Displays, and click New. Just creating a new graphic here. And this guy is going to be our timer, just showing the value of our timer here. And I like to label all of my displays. So I'm going to call him timer screen, for example. Make it nice and big so we can see it. And I'm also going to draw a numeric display object here. And hopefully let me do a refresh all folders here. I'm going out over our shortcut here, going out through our online folder, picking our timer accumulator bit. Awesome. And click and apply and OK there. And what's nice about Studio is you can come in here and just test this display real time, and you can see that we're pulling in that data from our Lynx Enterprise server here. You see that? And also, what I'll do is I'm going to save this guy. I'm going to call him Timer. That's our timer graphic. And then also I'm going to create another graphic, but this is going to be our home screen or our initial graphic. So let me label this guy as well. Make him nice and big also. And also I need a go-to button to get to this guy, right? So I'm going to just create a go-to button to get to our timer screen. I'm just going to create a go-to button here real quick. Just going to say issue a display command to our timer graphic, just like that. And I'm going to save him, call him home. Awesome. So you see here we have two displays. And then also I just want to create another go-to button just to get back to our home screen if we need to here. Let's just push button. Display home. All right. And then also save this guy. And now we got two different graphics here. I'm going to switch PCs. I'm going to come back over to our operator workstation PC, and I'm going to launch FTView SE client. Awesome. We have a client listed in here, but I want to remove that guy because we're starting from scratch here. I want to take you through the steps of creating one here. So I'm going to call this guy demo_client. All right. It's actually, hey, what type of application do you want to connect to? This is going to be our new network distributed application. Type the name of the application. Just hit this drop down and select it. Click next. And then what area is your HMI server in? So it's inside that HMI area. And what do we want our initial display to be? This is going to be our home graphic here. All these other guys, I don't have a starter macro or display parameter, so I'm going to leave those blank here. Here we have some more settings for our client. You know, do we want to maximize our window? Do we want that diagnostic list to be docked at the bottom? You can customize your clients here. I'm going to leave the defaults and click next. And then I'm not going to enable auto logout here. And I'm just going to save my configuration and open up my client now. So this is our remote client that's connecting to our HMI server or our task box over here for graphic information, all right? Awesome. So it just displayed our initial graphic, our home screen. I'm going to click our timer button to bring us to our timer screen, and look at that. We have our timer just indexing up there. All right. So let me go back to our easel or back to our engineering workstation. And a while ago we've used our HMI server so far that has the graphic information, and we used our data server so far to make the connection to our PLC. But we haven't used our alarm server. Right. So I just want to go in here. I'm going to go drill down into our alarm and event setup, and I'm just going to open that guy up. And this is where you configure your alarms. All right, and I'm going to create an alarm here that examines our timer that we created. So this is going to be a new level alarm. I'm going to call it timer alarm, and the input tag, I'm going to pull it right out of the controller here. There we go. all right? And this is going to be a high alarm, and whenever our second gets above 5 seconds, I want to consider that an alarm, all right? With a severity of 100, and then just a default message that says timer is above 5 seconds. All right, I'm just going to save that guy, and boom, that's it. Now we have an alarm in our alarm server, but how are we going to see that information? We need to create one more graphic here and drop in our alarm and event summary object. All right, and I'm just going to take all the defaults here, all right, and I need to create a button on this screen to get back to our home screen. All right, so I got our home button here. I'm going to save this guy, and I'm going to call him alarms, all right? And now I need some means of getting to our alarms graphic, so I'm going to come back to our home screen, copy this button, and edit it so that it takes us to our alarms graphic. Alarms. Awesome. And then I'm going to save this guy. And one point I really want to make is I'm making these developmental changes on our engineering workstation, right? And they're getting pushed down to our HMI server that's over here, right? And those changes get reflected in real time. So if I go back to my home screen, look, there's our new button, right? And now if I go to my alarm screen, I have alarms coming in here. So every time our timer gets above 5 seconds, I should see a new alarm. You see that? So now I've utilized all the servers here, our alarm server, our data server, as well as our HMI server. Awesome. So real quick, I think this is a good time to go for questions. I'm going to go back. Let me go back here to my presentation. All right. Awesome. So I'm going to open the floor for some questions here. Does the HMI server need to be a terminal server to serve all clients? Wow, that's a really loaded question there. Well, you know, terminal servers are optional, right? That's like an extra bell and whistle, right? If you have a terminal server, that means you have thin clients that connect to your terminal server and start like a remote desktop session, right? And if you do have a terminal server, this is where you would install FactoryTalkView SE client. You don't necessarily need to install your server there, right? So really all you need to install on your terminal server is FactoryTalkView SE client, and your thin clients will start a remote desktop session and check out the client license as they need to, all right? Another good question here. How about importing alarms from a different version like FactoryTalkView ME? The alarming mechanism inside of FactoryTalkView Machine Edition is completely different than Side Edition. And unfortunately, the alarms cannot be brought over, the native alarming mechanism. However, let's say you have a Side Edition project and you want to move your alarms from one Side Edition project to another, you most certainly can do that by right-clicking on the alarms and choosing the export option. Let me show that real quick, if you don't mind. Going back to our remote desktop session. So here's our alarm server. You could right-click on this guy and choose import and export. All right, and this will give you the option to export that alarm configuration. All right, moving back to our questions here. Can you briefly differentiate between a network distributed application and a network station application. Absolutely. The network distributed application allows you to have remote clients all throughout, the plant floor, right? But the network station application really forces you to only have your, really forces you to launch a client only where your HMI server is. You can't have remote clients connecting to an HMI server in a network station environment. The really difference between network station and local station is in network station, you have the ability to host your FactoryTalk directory on another computer. So sometimes it's a little confusing because they both start with network, network distributed, network station. But network distributed is a true distributed environment where you can have multiple remote clients. Does it require a separate license for each component, like Linux Enterprise, Site Edition, or that's a good question. Are different pieces do require an activation? So, for example, if you create an HMI server and then you create another HMI server, then you in turn need 2 HMI server activations, right? But the other pieces like our FactoryTalk Alarm and Event Server and our RSS Enterprise Data Server, those 2 do not require an activation like our HMI server does, all right? And I want to make it clear that our HMI servers inside of Studio, our HMI servers are licensed based on the amount of displays. So if you have a 100 count license, you can only have 100 displays in your application. This question kind of ties into what we said earlier. Is there a way to export the alarm server alarms to a spreadsheet of some sort? You saw me show you that example here. You certainly can export those to Excel, and that'll allow you to do like mass editing of alarms. And you can import them back in, make it really quick for you. Can multiple operator workstations be set up but with different screens displayed? Absolutely. When you have multiple clients, let's say client A and client B, client A can be on our home graphic, right, and client B can be on our timer graphic. They can be looking at 2 different displays at the same time. I couldn't demonstrate that because I only had, 3 images running here, but I could have most certainly had another operator workstation and shown that to you guys, that you can have another PC looking at a totally different graphic. That's a good question. Since the FactoryTalk directory server cannot have redundancy, are you relying on one PC anyway? That's Nick's question. No, you're not relying on one PC, because if that FactoryTalk directory does go down, that information is stored in local cache on all of the clients. So, all of your remote clients will have that information stored in cache. However, if you if you reboot your remote client box after your directory has gone down, then you're in trouble because we've lost that cache information, all right? If your application is created as a network station application and later, is it possible to change it to a distributed application? Absolutely. So if you create a project as network station or even local station, can you bring that project into a network distributed application? Absolutely. And how you do that is by importing your HMI project into a network distributed application. Let me see if I can show that real quick. Hit cancel on that. So let's if I came up here and I did add new server and I chose HMI server and I was bringing in a local station project, I would choose this option here to import a project. All right, and then I would drill down to my local station or my network station HMI project. Could you talk about using ALMAs and ALMDs in the controller? Yes. So the ALMAs or ALMDs are really only native to compact logics, control logics, controllers, and there's certain firmwares that you have to be at. So it's a little bit picky about which firmware you're running in the controller and what version of Linux Enterprise. But it's really nice because all we're relying on is the instruction in the controller. You know, the timestamp is actually sent from the controller. You know, we get that call a lot because the controller time will be different than the PC time, and customers say, how come my alarms are showing a different time than my PC? And that's because when you use device-based alarming, those ALMAs or LMD, they get to timestamp from the controller time, you know, which is pretty cool. And also, for that device-based alarming, we're only relying on Linux Enterprise, so we don't even need a factory talk alarm and event server in our project if we only have device-based alarming. Awesome, awesome. Let me see. That's another good question. With one HMI server, can you limit what screens any one client can get to while another be able to access screens? Yes, you most certainly can. And one way of doing that is applying security throughout your application. Let me see if I can show that real quick. So looking at our timer graphic, if I right-click on this guy and go to Display Settings, here I have an option that says Security Code. Right now it's an asterisk. That means wildcard or all of the codes apply, but I can set this guy to a certain code, and that means that, hey, if I set this guy to code A, you have to have security code A to see the screen, right? And we can grant or deny certain users a letter, and now that user can or cannot get to the timer screen. Now, I hope that answers your question there. Let me see. Is there a way to set up a regular backup using a batch file of the database and application while the server and client are running? You know, what's nice is there is the HMI backup and restore utility, and I think that is open to command line. So I think you could create a batch file that opens up the HMI server backup and restore utility and feed it commands to back up the project. Let me show you real quick where that utility is located. Start button, Office software, factory talk view, tools, HMI server backup and restore. And see, this is where we have our options here to back up our HMI project. All right. And you're not going to do this. I made a bad mistake here. You see, I'm running this here at my engineering workstation. Remember, our engineering workstation is not our HMI server here, so I should have done this on the task box. And if I had done that, I'd click this button and I'd see our HMI projects listed there. Let me see. Awesome, awesome. Man, I think that's it. Let's see.
Okay. Thank you, Avery, for that very informative discussion about FactoryTalk SE and a distributed system. And thank you, everyone, for attending the July 2016 Tech Connect Genius webinar. We will compile the questions you posed and attach the answers to the tech note along with the recording of this session. Thank you, everyone.